Welcome to the Answers Yes podcast, where we interview some of the most interesting people that have said yes to opportunities in their life. We hope that through these stories, you can learn to create your own destiny by saying yes along the way. Join us as we explore the new series covering topics such as passion, integrity, and hard work. I'm your host, Jim Riley, and I hope you enjoy these interviews as much as I do. I believe that everyone has an important message worth hearing. Hello and welcome to the Answers Yes podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate everybody. Hope you all had a great weekend. Just keep pushing these shows out as we move through the month of February in 2023. Montana weather, nice and cold out. So I think we're in the heat of the battle up here trying to stay warm and keep our animals fed and everything. So keep following along. I'll keep you informed. Hey, this week we've got a lot going on in my world. We've got lots of young entrepreneur syndicate classes. And my classes this week are going to be on the subject of the fact that we have a tendency to focus on our own rubble, the mess that we make. And I'd rather have you get focused on being out of that rubble and some of the great things that are happening in your life, and which is a perfect subject for today's guest. And I've got Troy Taylor on the line. Troy, how you doing?
Good. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Now you're going, how is that the perfect subject for me? Well, you're going to talk about cybersecurity, and oftentimes we turn our computers and our lives into a mess based on our cyber world. So I want to hear all about that. But Troy, everybody gets a chance to tell their story, where they started from, how they got to where they're at today. So we're going to let you do that, and we'll know a little bit more about you before we talk about cybersecurity.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
Yeah, so I have a long experience in entrepreneurship. In fact, I got my MBA from Boise State, the blue turf place over there in Idaho. I got my MBA from there back in 2004, and I sold my first company in 2003. I've learned a lot of lessons, both good and bad.
Yeah.
Over the last 20 some years. And I've one company, I was the third guy at the company, ended up selling for a couple $100 million. I learned about dilution. I at the time didn't know how dilution worked with shares, and I found out that one the hard way. But since then, I've started and sold a couple of businesses. The last one I sold in Idaho, and I relocated here to Oklahoma. And it was 70 degrees and sunny yesterday, so I don't want to rub that in for you. But,
hey, let's touch on those lessons you learned real briefly. I'm actually giving a high school class today on investment strategy, whether you're going to have an investor, a borrower, or bootstrap it. I'm a bootstrap person now because I've also paid some dummy tax, learned from some mistakes, as well as what dilution means. Can you just touch on that briefly? Because these are great lessons. People, here's the thing. They get excited about what they're doing, and you have a need for some capital or some partnerships, and you go in, but that fine print at the end of the day could bite you in the rear end. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're seeking funding, one of the shows that I both enjoyed and just makes me go crazy is Shark Tank. Some of these deals that the people take for their businesses, I'm like, no, what are you doing?
That's why they don't allow audience participation, by the way.
Yeah, right. So, making sure that you're giving up too much equity in your company. I'm a big proponent of not giving up a majority in your company too early. If you're only into it a few years and you're already less than 50% share of your own company, that's a bad scenario. So keeping a majority stake in your company and ensuring that you control the company as an entrepreneur. One of the things I like to talk about is dilution. And the way that works is, so let's say you have a company that's worth like $1 million. And let's say you bring in an investor that brings $1 million to the table. Okay, now your company is worth approximately $2 million, and half of that equity in the company is going to belong to that person that brought the money in based on what your valuation is. And so the way dilution works is, let's say, usually you start off with angel funds, small investments. They usually take a little higher share, for the first $100,000 or whatever is invested. So you start with angel and then you move on to venture capital. A lot of people call them vulture capitalists, but venture capital is where they bring in big bucks and they want to see you hockey stick grow your company, right? So venture capital. So let's say your company's worth now 20 million and they bring in 20 million, same concept. It's now worth 40 million and they have half of that company. So if you have shares in the company and you left the company right before that venture funding came in, when they come in, your shares were on 20 million. Now the new company's worth 40 million. Your shares don't maintain, they drop by half basically. So in my case, 3 rounds of venture funding came in, and there are tens of millions of dollars each round, and each time, my share values were going half to half to half to half, and I went from probably being able to retire to maybe being able to buy a nice sports car, type of thing. So, So dilution can really brutalize the shares that you have in a startup company, and you really need to pay attention to that. If I would have stayed with the company and not left before the venture round, I would have gotten granted more shares and et cetera, and that would have kind of offset the dilution. But that was not the case for me. So,
well, it's also important to note, oftentimes in those scenarios, the new money is going to lead the ship, and depending on the structure, they might even benefit from all the tax write-offs from losses, and and the sale, and even that sports car money might even go away based on how they decide to exit the strategy. So these are important things to know and to learn. And oftentimes they get overlooked in the heat of the moment because we're excited about, wow, I'm going to raise $20 million.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I've been there. Well, look, kudos to you for building a company that built that amount of valuation. Clearly, you were onto something and it was worth the kind of money. Unfortunately, it didn't land in all of it in your pocketbook. And there's a lot of people out there that have suffered the same scenario, but we're all smarter for it. And we move on, and certainly got new things to grow off of.
You bet. My last sale, I did okay. So
yeah,
it worked out pretty good.
Well, like I said, I've been bitten by the same bug, by the same investment strategy. And it's interesting too, because in my situation, people said, well, I thought that was your baby. I created a brand from scratch. I said, yes, it was. But I made the decision, or a series of decisions, that handed that baby over to somebody else to raise it. And, it just is what it is. So move on, learn the lesson. So thank you for sharing the story.
You bet.
Look, let's jump into cybersecurity, because I really want to give people some value here. And this is a tech world we live in. We're both on our Zoom calls from our comfy homes. Mine's got the heater on. Yours has the AC on. But our lives are so integrated into these computers. And I just love to hear your perspective and some of the pitfalls and some of the advantages of where we should be at.
Absolutely. I think entrepreneurs are one of the most overlooked areas in cybersecurity. Because when you're starting a company, you don't think, I got to keep this stuff safe. You're thinking about selling. You're thinking about building your next product, right? Security is often the last thing that you're worried about. And here's a sad fact. Over 60% of startups, small companies that get hit with ransomware go bankrupt within 6 months. 60% of small companies and startups that are hit with ransomware go bankrupt within 6 months. So you shouldn't be ignoring cybersecurity. Cybersecurity should be one of the things that you're paying attention to as you start your company. And that's one of the reasons. So at CRI Advantage, what I'm doing is I'm running the cybersecurity group, focusing on the SMB market. Because that's often overlooked. The cybersecurity companies are often going after the Fortune 500 companies where there's deep pockets and a lot of money to spend, and there's not enough emphasis on this SMB market space. So we look to change that, and we're actively helping. We advise clients. We do cyber advisor, we call it. We have one of the things a startup should be thinking about with security is I call it pick the low-hanging fruit, right? It's just like any other industry. Do the things that give you the best bang for your buck that you can do fairly inexpensively. And things like that are making sure that you have good perimeter defense, firewalls, that kind of thing. Make sure you have good endpoint defense. So in this age, as you pointed out, where we're all talking from our homes and we're all remote, and some people are going back to the office now, but there's still a larger percentage of the population and startups and entrepreneurs that are working remote. So making sure that those computers you're working on at home are safe, and that's endpoint protection. And endpoint protection, there's a lot of solutions on the market that are available, but you want to make sure that that computer you work on day to day is as safe as the computer you used to work on at the corporate office that had all the firewalls and everything around it. If you just have like your little Soho router that was given to you by your ISP, not good enough. Not good enough. You should be having some kind of firewall in place, especially if that's your primary place of doing business. So as we move forward as entrepreneurs working remote, we need to start thinking about these things. How do I keep my fledgling baby company safe so that I'm not one of those 60% that go bankrupt because I get hit with ransomware?
Troy, just for the disadvantaged, or if they're not familiar with the terms, what does being hit by ransomware look like? Because maybe they're getting hit and they're just, oh, that's how it all goes.
Yeah. So what is ransomware and how do you even know? So ransomware is where a bad actor, organized crime, a state actor, somebody like that, takes control of your computer and they encrypt your files. So they use encryption software and they encrypt it. And then there's a message that's popped up that says, your data has been encrypted. Please send X number of Bitcoin, which is a cyber currency that's fairly anonymous, not totally anonymous, fairly anonymous. And you pay ransom. And let me tell you, what's unfortunate is there's a lot of companies, including large Fortune 500 companies, that have paid ransoms because they get the stuff locked, they get all their files locked, and they don't got a good backup plan, and they don't got a good way to get these files back. And so the easiest way to get their company back, recently, Garmin, GPS company,
oh yeah,
they got hit with ransomware. And I don't know if they've actually publicly discussed if they paid the ransom or not, but a lot of people believe that they did. It wasn't cheap. It was like millions. So, and because their systems were down, they're part of a, 3, 4, something like that. So you're, as an entrepreneur, your startup company could be attacked, files encrypted, and now you pay a ransom. And you know what's weird of these ransomware actors? They make it affordable for you. They know you're not going to be able to afford $1 million, but for your little startup, that's $50,000 for you. And that could break the back of a startup. If let's say you're a company and you're a startup and you have a code base. There was a little known company, it was a little over 10 years ago. And they were a startup, and they were like, I don't know if you ever do software development, there's a company called Git, and it has an online repository for source files and things like that. This company was like that. And they got hacked, and the bad actors deleted all of their cloud instances of their platform, deleted their backups as well. The company had no way to recover from that and had to file for bankruptcy. And they're gone. They didn't survive. So, as an entrepreneur, you should be worried about your cybersecurity. You should be worried about ransomware. And there are solutions out there, and not very expensive. There are third-party companies that have endpoint protection that will recognize ransomware and stop it. Think of it kind of like antivirus, but a little more sophisticated. Mm-hmm. And it's usually not super expensive. It's like $50 a year per computer. So, not super expensive. And that right there could protect you from something like that. And so CRI, we built solutions, including what we call a managed security operations center. Security operations center, what is that? A lot of people, entrepreneurs, don't even think about that. Think about a command center, where everything is coordinated and organized. And now think that kind of command center focused on cybersecurity for your company. And so we outsource that. Companies from the entrepreneur all the way up through the bigger companies, we have a managed service that we offer to our clients to try to give them the ability to have the security that the big companies have.
I find it interesting, and I'm sure you've seen this, maybe you talk on it, is how many people just don't believe that they've been hacked, could have been hacked, and it's certainly not my computer. It must be yours. I have a great team behind me. I had a wonderful client, and they always paid me through ACH. I'd send my invoice over, and it had here's how you pay me type stuff on it, and payment never arrived. Like it was like their fourth time that they'd owed me, and that time it didn't arrive. I said, hey, you guys are been on time. What's going on? And they're like, oh no, we sent it. I said, no, I don't think so. And what's crazy?
I see where this is going.
Oh yeah, yeah. And by the way, I didn't get hacked, but it's interesting because they said, well, we have great software systems and a great cyber team, this and that. I said, well, look, I do as well, and everything on my end, I just had it gone through again. It's not here. Well, what wound up happening is literally somebody on their side was hacking their emails. So when emails came through with invoices to be paid, they duplicated my email address with the addition of a period somewhere hidden, like you couldn't tell the difference. And then
by one character.
By one character, yeah, there's the word I'm looking for. Then they went and got a bank account and basically duplicated everything but that one character with the bank account. And that allowed the client to pay what they thought was my account, and the email said, hey, there's an updated routing number, please use this. Everything else was exactly the same, right? Yeah. And here they were paying the wrong person. Now, here's the interesting part. This is the denial part. When we finally got down to the bottom of it, they said, well, this happened about 1.5 years ago, and we fixed the problem. I'm thinking maybe they didn't actually go away. They just put that on simmer for 1 year so they could strike again. I mean, that seems like how these people operate. I mean, if you got 1,000 people you're targeting to let one simmer for 1 year, go back to it and then get paid again, it's a pretty good gig.
I got a similar story to share with you from the news. A few years ago, there was a company that was a supplier for Boeing, the company that makes airplanes. And they were a supplier, and they had recently acquired another company. So like a merger, this supplier to Boeing. So once again, this is a supplier to Boeing. They had done a merger, and the accounts payable person got an email from the CEO going, what's going on? We were supposed to pay them this money we owed them for the merger. It's like $20 million. Sorry, it was $40 million. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Let me send it right now. Sent 20 million of the 40 million. It was a spoofed email. It was not real. The CEO ended up losing his job, even though he didn't make the mistake. The accounts payable person did. The lack of cybersecurity, that CEO lost his job. They had actually gone to send the rest of the money, and then they figured it out, and they were able to stop the wire before it went out. But $20 million gone into the yeah. So that is not uncommon for them to target companies, the accounts payable. Hey, here's a very common one. They pick the name of an employee, they email the HR or something, they say, hey, my bank account changed. Can you update my bank account? Here's my account number. And they'll update it. And then when they send your paycheck, it goes to somebody else, much like you were describing.
Right.
So it's not uncommon, and it happens a lot. So I like to say the weakest link are people. And that's why some of the most successful attacks are focused on people who work in a company to get them to do something that they think they're doing the right thing, and really they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing because we do put an awful lot of faith in people, that they're honest and trustworthy and that they're doing a good job. But these people that are corrupt, creating these issues for us, they're just a little bit more savvy than the person next door. That changing that one character notion. I was on the outskirts of some embezzlement with a woman that was in an inner circle of friends, right? And it wasn't smelling right to me. And I started sharing it with the other friends. They're like, yeah, that guy kind of noticed that too. Well, I happen to have some very close friends in the Secret Service in that local chapter. I said, hey, you might want to look into this. Something just doesn't smell right here. And they came back and they're like, yeah, this woman's got 10 different aliases utilizing fake email addresses by changing one character of millionaires, saying that they were investors and that you would invest your money. I mean, it was just this whole ring of things. I was so glad I was on the outside of that thing. But, people get very creative, and you really got to watch these emails and how they're addressing things. I mean, it's one of those things. If it smells bad, it probably is bad.
Yeah. Don't click links in emails.
Yeah.
That's, if there's one thing I can leave with entrepreneurs, is don't click. Think twice before you click. Think twice before you click, because that's a lot of ways that they infect your computer. Is they send you a link. That link goes to like a malicious website, then it attacks your browser, finds a vulnerability, finds the way into your system. So a lot of attack. It's called phishing. Like, reel them in.
Yeah, get the suckers. So Troy, when you guys are looking, or you're exploring with a potential client, what are the things you guys talk about to see if there's a fit, or how do you determine if there's a need? I mean, clearly we just gave some good examples on why there's a need.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked to companies as small as a handful of people, all the way up through companies that, have a couple $100 million in revenue. But our core target that we're focusing on is the SMB market. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, we were talking to one company that was a startup, and they had, I don't know, 5 or 8 people. And when in the process of talking to him, we realized that the person who started the company really didn't have any kind of knowledge about cybersecurity, and he was looking for help. And so we have this thing called a cyber advisor, where it's just a few hours a year, and we spread the hours, just a couple every month, and we just talk about things that they can improve and do better. And we advise them. One of the things we advised them on was getting endpoint protection on those 5 or 8 PCs that were being used at home. This company had no office. It was 5, 8 people scattered all over the country, and making sure that those endpoints were protected as robustly as possible. And so we were able to make them some recommendations, and also a central pane of glass to monitor all the computers they were using, those 5 or 8, and it would track all of them in one spot, so they could see, oh, this computer just got hit with a ransomware attack, or this computer just got phished and it's being locked down, and now they can't use the VPN to access company files, things like that. So a cyber advisor, advising them on endpoint protection, taking a look at, if the startup is involved in the tech industry at all, there's going to be an expectation by the people they do business with that they're secure. And that's called third-party vendor security. So if you're a tech startup and you're trying to sell to this big company, you're trying to sell your wares, whether it's software or a piece of hardware or whatever, they're going to ask you, they're going to give you like a spreadsheet of hundreds of questions around cybersecurity that you got to demonstrate that you have a robust cybersecurity practice. And this is very common now. It used to, maybe 5, 8 years ago, it wasn't as common. Now, if you do business with, I worked as a consultant for a while to a large medical company that ran hospitals and that kind of thing. And I had to complete one of these checklists on how I address security for my company. And here I was, one-man consulting company. And, so it's being expected of everybody. So keep that in mind. And so we kind of help across the board, and we can come in and kind of look at your business and do what I call a gap analysis, and see where you're strong, see where you're weak, and give you some advice on how to move forward, create a roadmap for you. Those
are some really good points of suggestion. Most people, when they create their business, they don't create a line item for cybersecurity, but yet we rely on these computers to dictate our lives. I always find it fascinating when people complain about the cost of a new cell phone, right? I mean, look, don't get me wrong, they're expensive, but how many hours of the day are you spending on that cell phone, right? A lot. Right. I see it. My screen time is up once again every week. Isn't it worth the investment to have good equipment? But equally, what we're talking about today is good security, and that should be a line item when you build out a business. Absolutely. Nowadays, especially. You'd thought that
as you know, the Wild West days of the late 90s, and when the internet just got launched and was booming, you would have thought we would have had security figured out by now. But here we are, 2023, and cybercrime is worse than ever. You know, when you get oil pipelines on the East Coast shut down by hackers, and you get ransomwares, I saw something. The number was in the billions. The amount of ransomware ransoms paid, they estimate in the billions of dollars being paid in ransoms to unlock their files because they had no backups that weren't encrypted.
I'm pretty sure when that balloon flew over Montana, I saw a beam of light come down to my house trying to get me, but
they were watching you. They
were watching us. You know, it's interesting now that I work from home and for myself the last, it's been, I don't know, 8 years now. I really miss that corporate life of having that IT team, you know, down in the basement with all the AC units running with the servers, and you know, they'd come up to your office and they weren't the most friendly or didn't have the best personalities, but you knew that your computer was safe because they had you changing your password every week, you know, even though you remember the one from last week, but they also solved all your problems. You know, now we have to subcontract that stuff, which is basically exactly what you guys do. But, you know, I always felt like, hey, if I had an issue, there was a team of people behind me, you know. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your team and how you work with your customers?
Absolutely. By the way, another big service we offer is incident response service 24/7. So just like you said, we have these small companies that they're lucky if they have one IT guy that works for the company, right? So we work with these small companies, and when something does happen, a machine is breached, or they clicked on that link in the email and it's infected or whatever, what do you do at that point? And so my team, one of the services we do is 24/7 by 365 incident response. And what that means is 3 a.m., my computer has a life of its own, and everything's moving around, cursor's moving, and I'm not staring at it. What the heck? You know, so you can pick up the phone and call us 24/7, and me and my crack team will be on the other end and help you through the crisis. And that's been one of our most popular services, I would add, that we're offering, because people don't know who to call, and it might take them a day or two to even figure that out. So having somebody on hand, on speed dial, that you can call in the event of a crisis has proved to be very popular, I would say. So my team and I, not only do we do things like security operations centers and cyber advising, we also do the crisis response. So in the event, I always say it's not if, it's when. It's not if, it's when. And that is because it's just a matter of time. There's there's money in it. Cybercrime pays, unfortunately. And that's why it's propagating, and there's so much of it. Yeah. So not if, but when something happens, you have to have somebody that you can go to that has the expertise to help you respond and recover. So that is often bundled with our cyber advisor service, so we can advise you on what to do to improve your security. And then if something happens bad, we're there holding your hand and walking you through the whole process, getting the bad guys off the network, get them locked out, figure out how they got in, and plug that hole.
Well, I think it starts with us all understanding that there is evil out there that want to do harm, and that especially comes in the form of computer and hacking and cybersecurity. Yeah, I'll give you the business idea of the year. You can run with it. Grandma tech, okay? Because my mom, at least once a week, says, honey, my cell phone doesn't work. I hit something, right? And I'm driving down to her house to fix her phone or our TV. So we need some grandma tech out there so they don't hit that button.
My mother-in-law is the same way. I did a good job of convincing her. She's petrified now to click stuff on her phone. So she always calls me, Troy, I got this text and it said that I didn't pay a bill. I'm like, you didn't click it, did you? No. I was like, good, delete it and don't click it. It's a scam. Oh, really? Another one? Yes, another one, Mom.
Another one. Yes. They come fast and furious.
Yeah.
Troy, I appreciate you sharing what you're doing and the valuable resource that you're bringing to entrepreneurs, especially our listeners, because this is often overlooked. I know I just paid up my own cybersecurity last week. I remember seeing the bill come through because it's important. You know, we need to protect what we have. And if you're not, you could be in big trouble. So thank you for that. Where can they find you guys at?
You bet. We're online at CRIAdvantage.com, and you can email me at Taylor, T as in Troy, Taylor at CRIAdvantage.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Hey, if you're listening, these are tips and tricks, man. We paid the dummy tax, so you don't have to. Pay attention, budget for these things, and protect your company. You're putting too much time and effort in there for somebody to hack away and steal what you've got. So, this would be a hard skill that you utilize your intelligence to make some good decisions for your company. We often talk about soft skills, but they're all skills you need to apply to the smartness of your business. So thank you so much, Troy. Thanks for being here.
You bet. My pleasure. Thanks for talking with me, Jim.
Thank you for listening to today's show. It is my pleasure and honor to interview all of the guests that have been on the Answer is Yes podcast. If you have enjoyed the show, please go on iTunes and subscribe, give a rating, or simply tell a friend about the show. We also believe in the message of our guests and the positive influence of their stories. As my own mentor and coach, David Meltzer, has taught me, spend some time every day thinking and writing about the things in your own life that you have more than enough of. You will find out how blessed we really are. Please visit my website, livelifedriven.com, for the latest updates about me and what I'm doing. Plus, I post a monthly blog about the many topics on this show. This podcast can also be found there. As I learned early on in life, what you believe is what you will achieve. Thanks, Mark Victor Hansen, and thank you, and have a great week.